What's up, everybody? My name is Brad, and today I've got another book review for you. And today we're talking about Whispers in the Dark by Laurel Hightower. And this was put out by Journal Stone. I believe this book came out last year, and last December, I think. Yeah, December 2018. But just over the last couple of months, I've seen a lot of people on my Twitter that have been reading it and raving about it. And so I wanted to pick this up for myself and give it a try. I actually checked it out from the library. Laurel, she is a fellow Kentuckian, and my library is pretty good about acquiring works by Kentucky authors, so I thought that was really cool that they had this, especially since it's small press. I believe Journal Stone's small press, so that was really cool. But this is Laurel's debut novel, and she totally knocked it out of the park. She killed it, especially for it being a debut. I love the plot, I love the story, I love the characters. It's dark and creepy. It does sort of play on a trope that we've seen before about seeing ghosts and seeing dead people. But she has, a twist to it that makes it fresh and new, which I really enjoyed. I have been reading the back on the last couple reviews for the books, but on this one I'm not going to because I feel like there's sort of a spoiler on the back that I wish I hadn't have known going into it. But we'll get to that in a minute. Excuse me. But this book follows Rose McFarlane. She's our main character. She has a traumatizing past. She has a lot of emotional baggage from her past. And actual physical scars from events from her past. But in the current timeline, she's on the SWAT team in Memphis. She's a sniper. She's this totally badass character. She's super cool and takes up for herself. She's a strong character. Like I said, she has all this emotional baggage from her past. When she was a child, her father was abusive to her, physically and emotionally abusive to her. As long as she can remember, she has always seen, sort of dead people and ghosts and these things called the Whispers. And her father would punish her whenever she would see these things. He'd lock her in the cellar down there with, the things she was seeing. He would lock her in a room at night. He had nailed her door or her windows shut. And he was just all around just a nasty person to her. And her mom would just sort of stand by and just let her father, do what he did to her. So she has all that emotional baggage. And then also when she was younger, I can't remember how old she was, but her house burned down when she was younger, and it ended up killing her dad and her brother. And the mom blamed Rose for their deaths in the fire, so they have a fractured relationship. They don't really have any relationship at all anymore. So basically Rose is sort of an orphan. Her father's dead, her brother's dead, and her mom doesn't have anything to do with her. But like I said, she had been seeing dead people and sort of these creatures called the Whispers. I think she only saw them once, but they were sort of human-like creatures, but they sort of had, monster-type qualities to them. And she would hear their whispers, and that would always be a precursor to her seeing dead people and things like that. But for the longest time, she sort of blocked that out. She hasn't seen anything like that in quite some time now in her adult life. But the book starts out with this hostage situation, and she's the sniper on scene for this. And things go south, and she ends up killing the perpetrator. And that is sort of a catalyst and a trigger for all that stuff to start flooding back. Hearing the whispers again, seeing dead people and things like that. Something happened with this particular person she killed that triggered all this to start coming back. Sorry, I'm gonna have to take a drink real quick. And the guy she killed, his name is Charlie Akers. And that's the part in the back of the book that I felt like was a spoiler. There's sort of this mystery between Rose and Charlie that the characters are sort of trying to figure out. But as the reader, I already knew what the answer was to that, what the revelation was going to be. And I sort of wished I hadn't known that, because I felt like that would have been more impactful if I had have known what was already going on. So that's a small, tiny little nitpick, but in no way did that affect my enjoyment of the overall story or anything. Like I said, Rose starts having these visions of dead people and things start coming back, and it also starts to affect her family. She has an ex-husband, Sam, and they have 2 children, Lily and Tommy. And Tommy seems to start seeing things as well. He has nightmares at his dad's house. He refuses to sleep there. He says he sees the gray people. The gray people are coming to get him, and the gray people are coming to get his mom. And he's sort of having nightmares, and it's very reminiscent to Rose of things she saw and experienced when she was little. But I don't really want to give any spoilers away for the story, but there's sort of the veil between, you know, our world and the world of the dead has thinned out somehow, and so the dead are freely coming into our world, which Rose is able to see, and she sort of has to take it upon herself to combat this and try to deal with this before the dead basically overrun the world that we live in. And there's a lot more that goes into it, like I said, but I don't want to spoil the story because I did really enjoy the story. It's got some super creepy scenes, some darkness to it, which I really loved. It's gritty. Like I said, the writing is great. I felt like the characters were real. There's one tiny nitpick with a character, and I'm not going to give any details because it does happen near the end of the book. But there was a character in a certain situation, and I didn't feel like they would have reacted the way that they did in the book, because this was something new to them, something they hadn't experienced before. I just felt like that wouldn't have been a true reaction. Like I said, that's in one small scene, like over 2 or 3 pages. It's only like a few lines or so on those pages. So it's a tiny, tiny nitpick, and something overall that I really enjoyed everything else. But like I said about the stuff on the back, that tiny little nitpick doesn't retract from the story for me at all. It's still a 5-star read for me. But this was an amazing debut. It had a lot of creepy and dark things in it, some really memorable scenes. There's one scene, like I said, I don't want to give it away, but it has to deal with a character, and they're talking about something that happened to them when they were little, and it has to deal with something in the closet. And that scene, I was vividly able to picture that in my mind, and that was very creepy what I was picturing and the way Laurel described it, to put that imagery in my head. There's a scene in the cellar when Rose is young that is super creepy, and there's a lot of visceral things in the book that she describes, which I really enjoyed. It was great. I love the climax to it. The very sort of climactic ending sort of feels sort of Lovecraftian, sort of a lot bigger than the story we had been seeing so far, which I really liked. And then we get to the epilogue, and the epilogue actually made me a little teary-eyed at the end. It was a great wrap up to the story, tying something back in that happened at the beginning of the book, which I really loved. So overall, this is a 5-star read for me. Like I said, this is a debut novel, and Laurel, she killed it. I can't wait to read whatever she writes next. I'll definitely be buying whatever she writes next. But this has been Whispers in the Dark by Laurel Hightower. Again, it's a 5-star read. If you're into sort of ghost stories, stories with strong, badass female leads, anything like that, you know, dark, gritty, you know, violent stories, I think you'll definitely like this. I highly recommend it. I just finished this earlier today, but this could possibly be my favorite book of the year. I'll have to marinate on it a little bit more since I did just finish it. But this is definitely in contention for book of the year for me. But that's all I really have to say about it. because I don't want to spoil anything for the story. But have you read Whispers in the Dark? If so, I'd like to hear your thoughts about it down in the comment section, whether you liked it, didn't like it, whatever. But again, that's all I have for y'all today. Again, my name is Brad. Thanks for spending your time with me, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.